Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on my video. This is Rocky and this review will be for episode 8 of The Flash. So this episode is basically our big initial Arrow and Flash crossover show. So we get the introduction of a new villain in this episode by the name of Roy Bivolo, who gets named Prism by Cisco in the episode. And we're shown that Prism has the ability to essentially project like a red light from his eyes, which incites anger in anyone that basically looks in his eyes. He affects basically an entire bank, which allows them to steal money and leave. Now, Roy Bivolo is from the comics, and oddly enough, in the comics, he actually is named Rainbow Raider, which is suggested by Caitlin towards the end of the episode. And in the comics, he basically had goggles that allowed him to project solid beams of colored light, or you could use them to basically douse a person in light and make them feel an emotional response based on the color of the light. So, they kept some traditional parts of the character, but just made it to where his eyes are projecting the light. Now, we only see red in this episode, but it's completely possible that he'll have the ability to project different forms of light through his eyes in later episodes, as I imagine he's going to be probably one of the rogues eventually on this series. Now we also get the initial cameo of Oliver helping to save Detective West and Barry, and basically Team Arrow has arrived in Central City looking for this killer that uses a boomerang, as the metal that the boomerang's made from ties back to Central City. So they're just kind of playing off a lead there. And, Arrow just happened to show up to help as he was looking for information, basically. So, I mean, right away, Barry and Felicity are all both very keen on having a team up with Team Arrow and Team Flash. But Oliver's, definitely not keen on the idea, as well as certain members of Team Flash aren't as well. And of course we've got Diggle there just basically stunned and dumbstruck at the display of Barry's powers, and he kind of goes on and on for a little bit, wondering, asking Oliver, do you think he does everything fast? How fast does he go to the bathroom? Just things like that. So it's just, we see like basically what would be, a typical human reaction to someone moving that fast, as opposed to like Oliver that doesn't really have much reaction, and Felicity who kind of just fangirled out on it. So definitely get some comical moments with Diggle, so definitely enjoyed that. We also see that Barry has been using his Flash persona to basically flirt and kind of creep on Iris a bit. He keeps running by, seeing her smile, and kind of flirting with her, because with Flash being the Flash, he gets to say the things that he can't normally as Barry. He can let her know his feelings, but he's not technically being honest, because he's not saying that it's Barry's feelings, it's a Flash. So we get that the hints in this that he's been doing that, and we have Caitlin telling him basically you need to stop trying to ruin her relationship and things like that, which he's not listening to because he's very stubborn. We see, there is some tension with Iris and Eddie right now, as she's basically, defending the Flash, that she thinks he's, a beacon for the city of light, of hope and everything. And, Eddie's just not so sure about it. And Eddie actually approaches the captain and is wanting to put together a Flash task force, basically to take him down. And, Iris finds out about this from Barry, and, they have a little tiff in the precinct, and, Eddie is a little bit upset at Barry that he didn't kind of have his back. Of course, Barry just, wants to get with Iris at this point, so he's kind of going about things in a bad way, and, that definitely affects things later on. We definitely do get a funny reaction from Iris when she meets Oliver at the coffee house, and she's just kind of staring at him, and Oliver just kind of has that effect on women no matter wherever he goes. And we find out that Oliver's on her 3 list of like 3 people that, she would basically cheat on Eddie for, and things like that. And, we just see Barry in the background just kind of putting his head down, feeling worse and worse about being compared to Oliver. She mentions that Oliver's arms are like twice his size and things like that. So it was definitely an interesting scene there, and I thought it was played off pretty well by everyone. Stephen Amell just had that classic Oliver straight face with a slight smile that, he's basically perfected at this point. And basically through this scene, we get Felicity basically convinces Oliver to help Barry. And the first way Oliver thinks of doing this is, aside from trying to track down this Roy Bivolo, is to start training Barry. And he goes to this, little speech that, he's analyzed all the crime scenes and visited them. And, he's seeing that Barry is just kind of reacting to instances and not fully using his powers, as he brings up the example of the derailed train with the Captain Cold episode, and how he could have, checked out the full train even before confronting Captain Cold, and, if he saw the bombs, having them disarmed and things like that, because he can move that fast. And, Barry doesn't take to this too well, because he's like, I have the superpower kind of thing, and, he kind of feels like he's better than Oliver in some instances. But, Oliver clearly shows that he's not paying attention in this scene, as, he basically says you're going to get shot by an arrow, and Barry runs at him. Oliver shoots an arrow, Barry catches it, but then he misses the 2 crossbows behind him that get him right in the back. So in this case, he didn't take an arrow to the knee, he took 2 arrows to the back. And, not everyone is happy about Arrow being in Central City. Detective West and Dr. Wells in particular are not happy about having him there. Because at this point, we get to see how Oliver, or the Arrow, is looked at outside of Starling City. He is, basically considered a murderer. I mean, he's killed quite a few people. He's involved in, several, cataclysmic attacks on Starling City. Granted, he was defending the city, but he was involved in those situations. So this just, brings up a lot of red flags for these two, and they see that Barry kind of idolizes him, and they're just reinforcing, Barry, you're a hero. You do what's right. This isn't someone you need to look up to. And Wells in particular is very, put off by not knowing who Arrow is. And he actually approaches Felicity, asking pretty much directly who the Arrow is. And, she says, it's not my secret to tell. But Wells does eventually figure out it's Oliver. How he figured that out? I mean, since it seems he's from the future, or at least has access to future information, it stands to reason that he should already know, as in the comics at one point, Oliver basically revealed that he was a Green Arrow. So that should be kind of a matter of public record in the future, but, we don't see where he made that connection. But either way, he does, figure out that it's Oliver and names him. And the looks on everyone's face at Team Flash was pretty great on that. And, Cisco tries to say that, he was close to figuring it out. He had like a list down to like 150 people and things like that. So we got a lot of little comedic moments between the teams, which were, made for a great episode, I thought. As this is kind of a test to see how these, crossovers are going to work. Based on this, I definitely think we're going to get a lot more crossovers. So within the episode, Barry, in his kind of frustrations, ends up going after Roy on his own, which, as we've seen in past episodes, when Barry does this, it doesn't always end well for him. Typically, he ends up getting the crap kicked out of him. In this case, he actually ends up getting whammied by Roy, as reference that's been brought up repeatedly in the episode. But the way with how Barry's powers are working, it's actually causing the anger effect to slowly build within him and last for a lot longer. So he's got all this, bottled rage that he's been having is just building up inside of him. And, he ends up going off on Caitlin a little bit by, saying not to treat him like Ronnie, and, he goes off on Oliver about how Oliver's jealous of him because he can have all these things, but he can never be what Barry is. He even goes off on the police captain, and right in the middle of the precinct, which is just, that's career suicide at that point. The fallout from that's just going to be, I don't know what's going to happen. And, it basically trails off to he tries to, it looks like he's intending to kill Eddie. He's focusing his rage on him because Eddie is with Iris and Barry wants to be with Iris. So he's just focusing all this rage, and especially with the wanting the task force and everything. And, he's just focusing on Eddie, and it's, very brutal seeing the Flash use his powers that way. And of course, this leads into, what everyone was, anticipating this episode, the actual Arrow versus Flash fight, which I thought was shot amazingly. It definitely felt like an Arrow episode as far as the choreography, and it really showcased both characters' abilities. We see Barry definitely, in his rage, is actually using his powers to more efficient levels. As at one point, Oliver shoots him with basically a large tranquilizer dart or arrow, and Barry vibrates his body to such a speed that the toxins basically are shot out of his body. And we see him, basically create a tornado whirlwind around Oliver and do his super speed punches, things that we haven't seen him really do yet. And, this is just, he's reacting off anger. So it'll be interesting to see if he remembers using these abilities or using his speed in that way, and see if he'll use them later on, because it's definitely expanded out his power set. And with Oliver, we definitely get that, taste of his tactical knowledge. As, what he was trying to impress on Barry earlier is that, you fight your enemy on your territory. Which initially, Oliver doesn't get that chance to, because he gets, sped away by Barry, but he ends up getting the fight where he needs it to be, where he has his traps set up and things like that. And, he hits Barry a few times while Barry's running fast. He gets him a couple times. He gets him with like an explosive arrow. He's got all these plans set up to counter basically Barry's speed. And, during this whole time in the background, we have at, Star Labs, we have Diggle and Cisco basically going back and forth on, who's better, Arrow or Flash. And then, Felicity's just sitting there mortified. Like, she's like, they could kill each other, and these guys are kind of goofing around about it. But, Oliver does, succeed at his task of basically trapping Barry long enough for Detective West and Dr. Wells to show up with a van and basically flash multicolored lights, which help bring Barry out of this, rage that he's in. And he comes down from it, and, Cisco basically is like, hey, it was a tie. But honestly, I got to say Arrow won this one, because he succeeded at his task, which was helping to neutralize Barry. If he had tended to completely kill Barry, he would have succeeded in that as well, I think. So he's just got that experience background. But it was definitely a well-shot fight. The special effects of Barry's powers were great, and just seeing him expand out his repertoire and his power set was very amazing, I thought. And like I said, just beautiful camera work and special effects. So we transition back to Star Labs, and we get the Oliver speech to them, basically stating, my identity needs to be kept secret to protect those I care about, those I love. And, he's going on and on about that a bit. And then Felicity steps in and translates that what he's trying to say is, he enjoyed meeting all of you and working with you and hopes to do it again, which obviously isn't what he was saying, but, she's trying to be that diplomat between them. And we also get this where Felicity is actually asking for Caitlin's help in running some trace DNA on the arrows that killed Sarah. So I think this is probably what's going to connect back into the Arrow episode, as well as they still have the Captain Boomerang issue to work on. So that's where we're there. And, after the basically fallout from everything that happened with the Flash, and this is the Flash task force that Eddie wanted gets approved by the captain. He's burned bridges with Iris at this point. He tries to recover, but, she's just like, go away. And, this, brings the talk with Oliver and Barry where Oliver's like, look, you have to let her go. Guys like us, we don't get the girl. It just, it reflects what's going on with Oliver and Felicity. And the fact that to be the hero that your city needs, you can't have those emotional connections. So I don't think Barry's going to stop trying to repair his relationship or the Flash's relationship with Iris. But, we just, we get that mentor thing from Oliver in this. And surprisingly enough, within the coffee house, we see the girl that Oliver actually was pregnant with Oliver's child back in season 2 of Arrow. There was a flashback scene where she was talking with Oliver's mom, and Oliver's mom basically paid her a bunch of money to disappear and, say that there was a miscarriage, basically. And, we see her and Oliver, the look on Oliver's face is, quite, he's quite surprised, but, he has a slight smile as well. I mean, he definitely remembers her. And then, we see her basically, it looks like she calls up a child on a phone saying she's bringing home some hot chocolate. So, I mean, are we looking at possible, Connor Hawk? We don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but I mean, that's kind of like a little tease there that, we may actually see some scenes where, Oliver maybe finds out that he has a child and how he's going to react to that. And then we also get the post-show scene that finally reveals that, yeah, Ronnie is alive and he is completely on fire, figuratively and literally. So that was kind of the big reveal tease at the end. And like I said, I just think there's going to be a lot of fallout with this episode for the Flash to deal with. I mean, his credibility is going to go down the chutes at this point with not only with the police and Iris, but with the people in general, and, how they're all going to react. Because, I mean, he did a lot of really bad things, and we'll just have to see. I'm going to be interested to see how this is going to connect back to the Arrow episode to complete the 2-part kind of arc. But yeah, I mean, I thought this was definitely a high point of the season. For me, it was like kind of right under the pilot as far as like one of my favorite episodes of the season so far. And like I said, the fight choreography between Barry and Oliver definitely felt like a Arrow episode to me. As Arrow is just, especially this season, has gone above and beyond with her fight choreography and pushing what their actors can do. So I definitely felt that in this episode as well. And, seeing Barry expand on his powers was great. And, finally getting that reveal that, Ronnie is alive. And, we'll see how that's going to play out. But yeah, very solid episode. Let me know in the comments below, were you guys rooting for Team Arrow or Team Flash in this episode? And, what do you guys think about the reveal of Oliver possibly having a child out there? How do you think that's going to play out? Is that something you want to see, explored within either the Flash or the Arrow? Definitely let me know in the comments below. And as well, if you have any questions about the episode or any of the characters, as always, go ahead and put those down in the comments below as well. I'll be happy to go over that information with you. And if you've enjoyed my video, I'd ask you to go ahead and give me a thumbs up and share the video over Facebook, Twitter, Google+, whatever social media platform works best for you, and anyone you feel might be interested in the video. I'd definitely like to hear what they have to say as well. And if you, if you'd like to, I'd ask you to go ahead and subscribe to my channel, as again, I will be doing weekly reviews of The Flash as well as the other Marvel and DC television shows going on right now. And if you have gone ahead and subscribed already, thank you very much. I really do appreciate you coming on board, and look forward to having some great conversations with you guys about The Flash. All that being said, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.